As a script doctor, how many times will you reread a script before you start rewriting it?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, first, obviously, like the cold read, and then, I do all of the sets of notes, but I actually like to go sort of in stages. So I don't know if I would say I read it and reread it many times before I start, but I work in little stages. So let's say I get the script, right? I do my set of notes, I have a conversation with the writer or the producer on how we're going to tackle the doctoring of the script. And then I would do a first pass on the script that, for example, just tackles formatting and things like that. So I'm familiarizing myself with the raw file in a way. It's sort of this dance where I'm like, okay, I'm putting my fingers, to work on this script. And I just fix like the little things. And then I do a second pass, where I'm focusing on the characters. And then I'm changing things around and moving. And then I work, with the structure and things like that. So in a sense, I'm reading it multiple times, but at the same time, I'm tackling things. I don't think I just read it multiple times before. I just have conversations about it to a point where I'm like, okay, I think like I understand this script. So I talk to the writer or the producer, and we're so in sync that I'm kind of dreaming about this script before I actually put my hands to it.
How do you determine what parts of the screenplay need the most attention?
I think that the first thing for me, it's always character. That's where I usually start, because I feel like characters, especially the protagonist, determines absolutely everything about the script. I think that character relates to the structure in a way that writers a lot of times forget. And I would say that that's one of the things that I focus the most about when I'm analyzing a script. That your protagonist has a goal and they have, a want, they have a core wound, they should have an arc in the movie, right? Or the TV pilot, whatever it is you're trying to tell. And all of that needs to be linked with the structure. So I think that that's one of the first things I focus on when I'm analyzing something. Every turning point of the story needs to be connected to that emotional arc and that emotional journey of your protagonist. If you're writing a pilot, every act out should relate to that emotional arc. If you're writing a feature, every turning point into the different acts or the midpoint should relate to that emotional arc. So that's one of the first things I look at when I'm looking at a story. Because more times than not, if the story is not working properly, it is because the structure is not there. And by that, I'm not saying you have to follow, a path. It's not like paint by numbers, it's not like, oh, you have to do this at every minute or every act has to be at this page count. That's not what I'm saying. And you can follow whatever path you like. Some people like the 3-act structure. Some people like the 8-sequence approach. Some people like Save the Cat, here's journey. Whatever it is you're following, audiences still expect turning points, right? We all have expectations. We all still kind of think in the 3 acts from Aristotle's Poetics, it comes from then. So there are expectations that the audience has. So you want, to follow someone's journey and you want to see someone change through the course of the story. So for me, that's the first thing I always focus on when I'm working on a story. If there's something that's not working, I look at the protagonist, I look at the structure, I look at how their journey is going, and that's one of the first things. Obviously, sometimes you're doctoring a script and, the arc is working, but maybe it's just the dialogue that you need to tackle. Or sometimes you just need to do polishes on some minor characters. But more times than not, it's that main structural issue that you're kind of tackling.
If you had a chance, is there one movie that is almost perfect that you would have, if you had a chance to come in and maybe give notes on the script, you would have changed a few things?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I wish I could have, endless amounts of time to think of like the perfect movie or TV show that I would like to change, But let me think. I think that, When Harry Met Sally, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, I think that there's a few things I would change. And perhaps it's also the fact that so much time has gone by. It's older movie. We hopefully by now see women different in movies. So I would maybe update that. That would be kind of like a dream job if I could do something like that, you know. I don't like that Meg Ryan is just kind of seen as this more hysterical woman in a way. Like, I like the contrast, you know, that's one of the greatest things about that movie. Sally Albright and Harry Burns, literally their last names tell you everything you need to know about who they are. But I feel like she could have been like more Albright, but not exactly just like more the hysterical woman. I would have loved to bring her down a notch in that sense and kind of make her not just all about the guy, you know, and she's the one that kind of like falls for him and he's not seeing it. I would love to a little bit more, you know, give her more depth to her character. I think that's what I would have tackled in that movie. But again, I think it's one of my favorite movies of all time, but that would be kind of like a dream doctoring job, I would say.
So maybe give her, I don't know if backbone would be the right word, but maybe have it where her goal was not just to sort of be chosen by someone.
Yes, like that's the thing, you know, she has her two best friends and they have this conversation one time when they're having lunch, you know, and one of them like brings out like Rotary, you know, like the old timey with like all of the guys like you could be dating now or something, you know, and they're talking about like, oh, I'm 32. Oh, your clock doesn't start ticking till you're, you know, they have all of these conversations that maybe back then, you know, they were like that. And that's what a lot of people were saying women wanted, but I would love to update that a little bit and not just make her about like the guy, and like your clock is ticking and you need to have the baby and this and be married by a certain age. I would like to update that. And I think that that would be actually a great take on an idea if someone is writing out there, sort of like a modern version of what that movie was, you know, When Harry Met Sally, such a classic. And I don't think something like that has been done since the 80s when the movie came out, you know, something like that with a more updated view on how we see women. Because this is kind of like going to another tangent, but one of the issues I tend to see a lot when I'm doctoring scripts, and one of the things I always point out, is that the female characters are not fleshed out enough. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves. I read so many great scripts where they just forget that women are three-dimensional characters and they just include them in the story because, oh, we need to add some females into the story. We want to see three-dimensional women. We want to see powerful, interesting protagonists and sad characters and not just, oh, the love interest that is just boring and just standing there, you know? So one of the things I always say is like, yes, you can be writing this raunchy male bad comedy and you're trying to add this female character, but give them some depth. Don't just like put the object of attention there without giving them something more. So if I'm doctoring something, those are the types of things that I'm focusing on with female characters.
Yeah, I'm a broken record with this, but I know Margaret Atwood always talks about how we tend to also make women too good, and that women are human, and so they're on different spectrums of good and bad, and so
yes, more layered.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the thing about characters. I like layered characters that are realistic. It's the same issue with antagonists. And I always like to say that antagonists should be the heroes of their own stories. They should be equally interesting, exciting, and layered as the protagonist. That's what makes a good antagonist. If we can put ourselves in their shoes and understand things from their perspective, and if we were in their shoes, we might do things that way. That's what makes them rich. That's what makes you want to watch a movie. Because if they're boring, layered, one-dimensional, then you don't fear for your protagonist. You don't see where the risk is. You don't see where the issues are. You're just like, oh, my protagonist is gonna win because this person is just lame and boring. But no, if you make them three-dimensional and not just the stereotype of what a bad guy should look like, kind of like put yourself in their shoes, make them layer, make them interesting, make them real people, not just like evil for the sake of being evil. I hate that trope when like the antagonist has to be evil because they're just evil. Like especially when I'm reading, action pieces or thrillers, a lot of the times the antagonists are just bad guys for the sake of being bad. I mean, if we're writing a really good movie and you want that to be a memorable movie, give them reasoning, give them something more why they're doing what they're doing.